Our top focus remains the Odisha train tragedy. Now remember, 275 people have died and over 1,000 people have been injured in the accident. Now these are visuals that we are getting from the accident spot. Remember, massive restoration work under the leadership of Union Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw took place at the accident spot, and now first sign of rail movement can be seen at the accident spot. Remember, this is the down line that has been restored. The Coromandel Express was on the up line, the up main line, and now there you can see senior police officials forming a human chain and first train movement after the tragic incident there near the Balasore district. Remember, massive restoration work was taking place because remember, over 150 trains have been affected due to the tragedy, and there we can see Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw also taking stock of the situation. The restoration of tracks started after the rescue operations were completed. Many bodies were extricated by the NDRF teams on the spot, and now we can expect in a few days from now for the tracks to be restored completely and rail movement to begin. Our colleague Saurabh Shukla has been reporting from the ground since the news of the tragedy broke, and he sent us this report on what were the main events of the day. But before going to that, let's actually listen in to what Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw is saying. This is a huge moment because it's the first sign of rail movement after the restoration works have been completed.
जिस तत्परता के साथ प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने काम करने के आदेश दिए थे, पूरी टीम ने उसी तत्परता के साथ काम करके एक प्रॉपर सिस्टम से दोनों की दोनों पटरियों को रिस्टोर कर दिया है और दुर्घटना के इस भयानक दुर्घटना के 51 घंटे के अंदर अंदर वापस ट्रेन का मूवमेंट नॉर्मलाइज हो गया है. अभी गाड़ी
3 trains colliding with each other, 288 dead, around 1,000 injured. The Railways Minister for India, Ashwini Vaishnaw, has announced a CBI probe into this accident. Why is a CBI probe necessary? Well, there is always a CRS inquiry after an accident, which is the Commissioner of Railway Safety Inquiry. That pinpoints what went wrong. But if it's to go beyond that, was it going wrong intentionally? Were there persons behind what went wrong? That calls in for another level of investigation, and that's perhaps why the CBI probe is being recommended. The Central Bureau of Investigation will probe the other angles that the railway authorities may not be able to do, because the CRS is a very technical body. It goes on certain parameters. It doesn't go beyond a certain mandate that's given to it, which is to pinpoint issues of safety and whether those safety measures performed to the expected levels, whether protocols were followed or not. But if there is another part to it, if there's more than that, for example, let's say the CRS inquiry finds that the point malfunctioned. Why did the point malfunction? That may not be completely clear in a CRS inquiry, which is why perhaps one needs to look at a CBI probe as well. The Railways Minister has held a press conference in Bhubaneswar and announced that there will be a CBI probe. In the meantime, what you see behind me is the OHE inspection car at the site of the accident as the railways work round the clock to actually restore overhead electrification, and also they want to restore what we call the tracks. The track restoration work has already begun. It's going on in full swing. Now you see the railways working on overhead electrification restoration, and this is something that actually the railways are working on. As you can see, they want to resume services on this route and bring back normalcy as soon as possible by resuming railway connectivity on a very important route, the Chennai-Kolkata route. But at the same time, spare a thought for those who've lost their loved ones, deceased, because while things will return to normalcy around here, for those who've lost a loved one, or for those who do not know if their loved ones are dead or alive, for them, normalcy, living a life like they've always lived, will take much more time. And normalcy for them will take a lot of time. It'll be time consuming and much more difficult, even as the railways work round the clock to restore normalcy on this very important railway route. With camera person Pavan Kumar at Bahagana in Balasore district of Odisha, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
So after 51 hours of restoration works, both the lines, the up line and the down line, have been restored. But our focus on NDTV remains on the human cost of the terrible tragedy. Hundreds of men, women and children have died and their families torn apart. Here's a look at our report.
इलेक्ट्रॉनिक इंटरलॉकिंग में जो चेंज किया जिसके कारण ये दुर्घटना हुई, जिसने भी किया, जिसने भी जो भी इसके कारण है वो इन्वेस्टिगेशन से निकलेगा। तो जो कमिश्नर रेल सेफ्टी है वो अपनी इंक्वायरी रिपोर्ट जल्दी से जल्दी देंगे। जैसे इंक्वायरी रिपोर्ट होगी सारे तथ्य पता चलेंगे, लेकिन एकदम क्लियर इसका रूट कॉज, इस इतने दर्दनाक, इतने भयानक एक्सीडेंट का रूट कॉज ऑलरेडी आइडेंटिफाई हो गया। जो कुछ अब तक का एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव इंफॉर्मेशन मिली है उस सबको ध्यान में रखते हुए आगे की इंक्वायरी के लिए इस पूरे मामले को सीबीआई के पास देने का रेलवे बोर्ड की तरफ से रिकमेंडेशन किया जा रहा है।
As more clarity emerges on what caused the Coromandel Express to derail, anxious relatives of passengers on the train are still searching for their loved ones in every possible place before heading to a morgue. This group of men have come to the Bahanga station looking for Nitam Roy from Malda, who was on the train.
তার ফোনটা যদি হসপিটাল থাকে হসপিটাল লোক তো ফোনটা ধরবে, কিন্তু সেটাও ধরছে না। আমরা সেটা নিয়ে আতঙ্কে আছি আর কি। তার বাড়ির লোক আতঙ্কে আছে, কান্নাকাটি করছে।
There are others in the hospital, anxious relatives who are still looking for their loved ones, hoping that they may be in hospital, hoping that they may be alive, but unfortunately so many people have died. So right now it's a very stressful and painful time for the families who have not yet been able to locate their loved ones.
Unsuccessful at finding their relatives in hospitals, despairing relatives have reached morgues.
यहाँ से क्यों मतलब शिफ्ट किया जा रहा है? भुवनेश्वर में फैसिलिटीज है रखने के लिए ज्यादा दिन के लिए, इसीलिए हो रहा है। थोड़ी हमें काम करने दीजिए।
For some, even though they have been told their loved ones are dead, the search continues. This man is going to Bhubaneswar after searching all hospitals in Balasore.
मेडिकल जितना था कमलपुर सब ढूंढ लिए, मगर कहीं नहीं मिला। अब जा रहे हैं भुवनेश्वर, वहाँ पर यदि होगा तो अल्लाह यदि सहारा जाएगा तो हो जाएगा।
Track restoration work will be completed soon as the railways are now completely focused on resuming railway services on this very important rail route. But for those who've lost their loved ones or don't even know if their loved ones are dead or alive or are yet to recover the bodies of their loved ones, for them, resuming their own daily lives and going back to normalcy is going to be much more difficult and time consuming. With Manish Kumar and camera person Pavan Kumar, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
What a terrible tragedy there. The lives of the victims altered forever. But electronic interlocking seems to be at the heart of the issue, with the minister also saying that it was a change in the electronic interlocking that caused the accident. What is it? How does it work? Take a look at this report. So Ashwini Vaishnaw, the railway minister, very significantly said today that it was a change in the electronic interlocking system that might have caused the accident. What is electronic interlocking system? We'll come to that. But very quickly, let's try and explain you through animation as to what exactly happened and at which point did the interlocking system went wrong. So first, remember, this is the Coromandel Express and the Howrah Express on parallel tracks on the up main line and the down main line. And it was at this point where the Coromandel Express was led off the main line and it went to the loop line and went on top of the stationary goods train that was already there at one of the loop lines. Now this is essentially the point at which there was either a signalling error or there was improper routing. Now both signaling as well as routing is controlled by the interlocking system. Let's try and understand what the interlocking system is all about. Now remember, it is an electronic interlocking system that essentially controls rail movement and makes sure that one train can switch from one track to another smoothly and safely. The other important point is that it is the interlocking system that ensures that at no point is one train attempting to get on a track on which there's already another train, which is what happened in this case, where two trains were on the same track, and that subsequently led to the derailment. So the interlocking system basically works, it's an integration between switch points, signals and track circuits. Now what are each of these? Let's go to that graphic on where we explain what these three things are. Switch points essentially are movable sections of a track which lead one train from one track to another. So these switch points have to be activated well in advance so that a train essentially can pass over the switch point and move from one line to another, say from a main line to a loop line. They manipulate the entire interlocking system. So these are crucial because they lead one train from one track to another. Now switch points work very closely with track circuits. Now they have to be aligned in a way so that there's a signal for a train to move over them and move to the next track. Now what are track signals? Let's go to that point. Track circuits are installed to detect a train's presence on a particular track. Now track circuits make sure that they detect and determine on time that a track is either occupied or vacant. Now this is crucial because it's only after the track circuits actually detect whether the track is occupied or vacant that the movable parts of the track, which are basically the switch points, they become activated and finally lead the train from one line to another. Now, what is the electronic interlocking system? Now, the interlocking system we've understood, but when this entire system is controlled by a software, it becomes an electric interlocking system. So basically, there are electronic communication networks that control switch tracks and signals and make sure that they communicate well and they are activated well in advance for the train to switch one track and go to the other. Now in this scenario, what could have gone wrong? See, the final probe report is yet to be out, but let's examine the various scenarios. Railway Minister has said that a change in the electronic interlocking system led to the Odisha crash. But what does it actually mean? So it means that actually when the Coromandel got off the main line and went to the loop line, there was either wrong signaling or faulty routing. That means that switch point got wrongly aligned and the train went to the loop line, or the other aspect could actually be that there was improper signaling and the track circuits could not detect that this particular track was already occupied by a stationary goods train and the Coromandel got onto the loop line. So these are the possible scenarios in this particular case. It will become more sort of clear when the final probe report is out. So let's go back to the animation very quickly once and try and understand that point. So this is the point. So here if you can see that there are 4 tracks, track A, B, C, D, and it is the signals, the switch points and the circuits that make sure that there is only one train at one track at one given time. So it has to be a seamless communication between these elements of the interlocking system to make sure that no such incident happens. Now the collision has put back the focus on railway safety. A 2022 CAG report has now surfaced that had warned of the consequences of operational lapses just 6 months ago. The report was tabled in Parliament in December and it had pointed out that 3 out of 4 of the over 200 cases of accidents it had recorded since 2018 were due to derailment and in turn due to lack of track maintenance. It also points out that the government had ignored important warnings on railway safety. Priyanshi has this report.
A CAG audit report flagged several lapses in India's rail safety a year before the Odisha train tragedy. Number 1, during 2018 to 21, the report says there were shortfalls ranging from 30 to 100% in inspections by track recording cars that are used to assess railway tracks. Secondly, under the dedicated rail safety fund, the priority expenditure fell while that money was being spent on non-priority expenditure instead. The government in fact spent just just 79% of the total budgeted expenditure for rail safety in this time period. Next, the expenditure for the renewal of tracks too fell by 23% from 2019 to 2020. Next, the targets for track renewal have not been met, and even the allocated funds for this have not been utilized. Next, the warnings have been ignored, even though 26% of train derailments are linked to track renewals and 3 in 4 train accidents are due to derailments. Lastly, the report also says that there has been a staff shortage. There was a 9 to 36% shortfall of required civil engineers across zones during 2018 to 21.
So had the government focused on those warnings, hundreds of lives in Odisha could have been saved. Time for a short break now. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's get your news coming in from Bihar. A portion of an under-construction bridge over the Ganga collapsed. The bridge is being constructed to connect the Khagaria and Bhagalpur districts of Bihar, and 2 parts of the bridge were seen collapsing into the water, and that dramatic collapse was caught on camera. Chief Minister Nitish Kumar has asked for a probe into the incident and has also asked the Chief Secretary for a detailed report. The bridge was inaugurated by Nitish Kumar himself a few years ago. Politics has now broken out, with the BJP also reacting sharply to the bridge collapse. The big international headline: US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will be in India, and this is just weeks ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's crucial visit to the US. Why is Lloyd Austin's visit diplomatically important? Maha has the details.
Now, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in India. Those pictures of his arrival here today in New Delhi are on the screens there. And why this visit is significant 2 weeks ahead of Prime Minister Modi's state visit to the United States is because some groundwork on crucial announcements that are expected in Washington, D.C. are going to be done. He is going to be meeting his counterpart Rajnath Singh tomorrow, and it is during this meeting that one of the important aspects of the relationship between India and the United States, that is the defense partnership, is going to be talked about. In fact, the discussion between the two will also focus clearly on the possible big announcement that is to be made on the 22nd of June when Prime Minister Modi visits the United States. As we have pointed out, there is going to be a thrust on the defense ties between the two major partners, India and the United States. But now, coming to the specifics, a deal is expected between HAL, that is Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, and GE of the United States for a likely deal that is going to look at joint production of jet engines that will be used by HAL for, in fact, their LAC light combat aircraft. That deal is expected to be announced on the 22nd of June during the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Joe Biden. In fact, it is the groundwork for this that is expected to be finished when Lloyd Austin is here in India. HAL is going to use these jet engines for its LCA. The notification to the US Congress is expected to be made. This is procedural. It has to be done before possibly the 22nd of June. So that's why this visit of the US Defense Secretary becomes important and significant.
So that crucial diplomatic visit of the US Defense Secretary. But before we go, let me leave you with a question. Can you spell Samophile? Well, it's become the word of the season, and I, for one, don't even know what it means, let alone knowing how to spell it. But Indian origin Dev Shah has become the star of the Spelling Bee Championship this year after he spelled this word correctly. I spoke to him earlier. Here's what he had to say. Let me first begin by asking you, tell us about that moment. Can you recount that moment for us when you spelled that word correctly?
Yes, I expected to spell it correctly because it was a word I studied before.
Right, and I have to ask you this. Tell us the most obscure word that you can spell and tell us what it means. Enlighten us, because I'm sure you've come across a lot of such words in your preparation. So the most obscure word that you can spell correctly.
Probably Romic, R-O-M-M-A-C-K. It's a dialectal word, so it's only used in some parts of the world, and it means to bounce about. Romic.
Right. And I hear you also have a tenuous India Connect. So talk to us about that. Have you been to India? What's your India Connect?
Yep, I've been to India once or twice, 7 years ago.
All right. So before I let you go, you're very young yourself, but what would your advice be to all those people who are aspiring to enter the world of spellings and perhaps go ahead and win a spelling bee championship as well? What would your advice be to all of them?
My advice would be to be focused and never give up, because that is important.